And I think when we say like all athletes are using drugs, you take that kind of phenotype, that type of athlete, you take their accomplishments and you just literally throw them to the wayside. And that's not fair to do. But it's also not fair to pretend that all athletes, even in tested federations, are playing by the rules.
I think, again, for people at my age, it was either the East German female athletes, or the other big event was Ben Johnson in the '88 Seoul
Yep.
Olympics, which was just a
Yeah.
worldwide news story. And then
Yeah.
up until that point, it had been drugs, performance enhancing drugs was something that was only kind of really associated with athletics. And then obviously you had the BALCO scandal, right, where it
Yeah.
suddenly just blew the lid off the
Yeah.
fact that this was probably happening in almost any professional sport. And the more people I speak to, Victoria, in this, there's almost kind of like a nod and a wink, like everyone's at it. You have to be, the
Yeah.
performance enhancing drug industry, if we can call it that, are always going to be one step ahead of WADA or whoever else because of the money involved. Given your unique perspective in the fitness industry, professional sport, and with performance enhancing drugs, is abuse far more widespread than the average Joe assumes?
We would never know. That's the thing, is that you're not going to disclose that you're doing something if what you're doing could get you, in some countries, arrested. If what you're doing could get you kicked out of your sport, your records taken away. What I can tell you is that I have been privileged enough to work with elite coaches, athletes, and practitioners working with elite athletes in all sectors. So from professional boxing all the way to Olympic level, track and field, to your strength sports, your untested federations, even bodybuilders, best women in the world. And that what always strikes me is that when a professional athlete or an elite athlete has that, I'm going to call it the it factor, when they have that thing that I don't possess, they honestly don't. And I'm always so shocked, but I've got this one individual I work with. She's the most lovely individual. She's so on top of her training and her recovery and everything else, but she has zero consciousness of supplementation and drugs. Zero, because she grew up through kind of that WADA sport world. So she always just, they're bad, you don't take them, you don't need them, they're doping. She has zero consciousness, yet she's still one of the best in the world at what she does. So those people exist. And I think when we say like all athletes are using drugs, you take that kind of phenotype, that type of athlete, you take their accomplishments and you just literally throw them to the wayside. And that's not fair to do. But it's also not fair to pretend that all athletes, even in tested federations, are playing by the rules, that they are completely, quote, natural athletes. It's also unfair to label drugs as being good or bad when really they're neutral. They're not. So I feel that, like, at the end of the day, there are athletes that, research has, I gotta say, there's some pretty crazy estimates right now in research of the, like, drug use, certain, like, millions of people. And I'm like, do I think that I necessarily agree with that? Maybe not. I want to know where they got those numbers from. They don't actually explain, but it would be great if they could talk about it. If you look at the actual doping kind of levels, they're not astronomically high in organizational sport. What we do need to be concerned about is individuals who are not in organizational sports that are using substances, because I think that's the bigger question we have to be talking about. That's the bigger issue, and that there needs to be more awareness, is that performance enhancing drugs are, they're being used by people in high elite kind of employment worlds, career worlds, to be able to always be awake, never sleep, never be sick, right? So they're using certain substances to enhance their vocational performance. And then you get the individuals that are your everyday gym goer that are also using these substances, and that we have so much attention towards professional sports in terms of testing for drugs and testing athletes and, making sure that they're top notch, that we fail to see that there are many other sectors that are using these drugs that aren't getting that same attention. And that when we think about the adverse risks, that's really who we're seeing them in. It's not necessarily the elite athletes.